Shay, welcome to the show.
Todd, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to
Yeah,
be here and dig in.
yeah, the pleasure's all mine. Maybe we can just start off with a basic introduction.
Yeah, so I am Shay Howe. I am the Vice President of Platform Strategy at ActiveCampaign.
Cool.
I can go a lot of different areas from there, but I'll let you drive.
Yeah, no problem at all. Maybe you can explain what is Active Campaign, who is it for, how many employees, kind of anything you can share for context.
Absolutely, yeah. So ActiveCampaign is a customer experience automation platform where our mission is basically to help every company meaningfully connect and engage with their customers. So we offer a variety of tools around what might be email marketing, a CRM, landing pages, forms, live chat. With automation at the heart of it, right? All of that is focused on how do we build automation into it, and largely how do we use other tools within that customer experience as well, right? So a very heavy integration-based platform where you can bring all the different tools from your customer experience together. We have a unified data model that organizes and makes that data actionable so that you can put it into action across that customer experience.
Yeah, customer experience management. It must be really hard for you to have one all-encompassing word because Active Campaign does so much, right? So
Yeah.
you guys landed on customer experience management, I guess.
Customer experience automation, but
Sorry, customer experience automation.
yep, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's there's a lot to unpack in it, right? We kind of talk about it in four different pillars, if you will, which might help. Those being it starts with segmentation. Like, how do you get all of your data in? You really want to learn how you start to segment your audience, your customer base around those, right? So that you're actually connecting with the right people at the right time with the right message. We then layer in orchestration, right? And that's orchestration of all of the different integrations or tools you have to say, we don't just want to take data from one end of your system and put it into another tool. We actually want to bring it together, really unify it, enrich it so that it becomes more valuable by going through ActiveCampaign, but orchestrating across different tools and those experiences. We then put automation into the mix of it. Naturally, that's kind of our bread and butter. And then it's personalization at the end, right? Like truly ensuring that what you're doing with those folks are personalized experiences. Everyone feels and knows when they're in an automation, right? Like when they know it's overly process driven. We want these businesses to be able to talk to their customers like they have 10 customers, regardless if they have 10 or 10,000. So really leveraging the data and interactions through that.
Yeah, super interesting on the integrations but for researching this podcast. So we're probably a typical use case where we have different tools. We have Unbounce for landing pages. We have MailChimp for email.
Yeah.
We have HubSpot for CRM. We have Typeform for the forms on our website.
Yep.
WordPress forms. We use Zapier to try and pull things together. And when looking at ActiveCampaign and obviously some of your competitors as well, it kind of brings everything into one place, which unifies the data
Yeah.
and means you're able to automate and do much more with it. Yeah.
I'm curious, how do you get all those tools to work together today?
It's tough actually, and it's becoming more and more of an issue.
Yeah.
We don't, because we're B2B and we're an agency, we don't have huge volumes of leads and data
Yeah.
to work with. We're in the few thousand contacts, so relatively small. But as we've got bigger and we've scaled up, we find that's become more challenging, and getting everything to work together is challenging to attribute, different marketing campaigns and all of those things. So actually what I was saying to people in the team is actually for this year, we really should move to something like Active Campaign.
Yeah. Well, we can certainly help you out there. I'm very happy to dig in, and I get excited digging into those customer stories, right? And those use cases. To me, those are really exciting, just like puzzles. And so if you want help, let me know. We can take that offline. But I'd love to dig in with you.
I'll definitely take you up on that. So originally, how long have you been with Active Campaign?
Yeah, I've been with ActiveCampaign over 3 years. I think 3.5-ish. You had asked customer size or headcount and whatnot. So to put it in perspective, an incredibly hyper growth organization. I started in 2017. We were right around 100 people. Today we are north of 750. I started, I want to say in the 20 million ARR range, well over 100 million today. And that same time, we've scaled from roughly 40,000 customers to well over 130,000 to today. In fact, we added over 40,000 customers just in 2020 alone. So
Wow.
basically, what we did last year is bigger than the business when I started 3 years ago. So
Wow. What has that been like? Just actually, firstly, what were you originally hired to do? Were you leading design?
yeah, this is a good story, actually, Todd. So I was hired to lead design, and that's my background. Like that's what I went to school for. That would be kind of all stars aligned to design. And to me, design is it's how you solve a problem, not just how do you make this look good. I want it to look good, but it doesn't really matter what it looks like unless it solves that problem first. Um, and Jason, our founder, CEO, I spent some time with, and my background's in hyper growth B2B SaaS organizations. So I was at Groupon in the early days of going public. Joined a company shortly after that on the early stage team of how do we build customer loyalty programs, so B2B SaaS for small businesses. And talking to Jason, I was like, I love the gray areas of an organization in those hyper growth phases where no one really knows who owns it, where to go, how to dig in. Like I get excited about those. So I'm very comfortable leading design, but I'm also going to chase those areas. Just a few short weeks in, we didn't have anyone leading our engineering team, and it was like, hey, like design's in pretty good shape. We just got to make sure we can build it. And
Yeah.
Jason's like, yeah, you should lead engineering as well. And I've
Wow.
been an engineer. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry about that.
No, I said, wow. That's quite some shift in a few weeks.
Yeah, and like I've been an engineer, right? Like I would not say I'm the world's best engineer. I'd say I'm dangerous at it. But I can, I know how to structure a team, to give them a process, a good vision, right, to hire well. And I did that for well over half a year, and hired Tony, our CTO, is absolutely incredible. Has came in and just revolutionized the team. But it's funny, like at the end of that 6 months, Jason was like, "Hey, that worked really well. Um, we need someone to lead marketing. Would you mind leading design and marketing?"
You
And I
lead
was
the whole
like,
company as well, Shay. Just why am I even here? Just take over.
yeah. And it was like, I was like, I've engineering I was comfortable with, right? Like that engineering, product, and design trio. Like I'm that's where I spent my career. Marketing, I was like, yeah, that's a stretch, but that's what I enjoy. Like that's what I'm here for. Like let's dig into this. And I did that for over 2 years, until what would have been the end of 2019. We were growing quickly. I was like, Jason, this is like, it's irresponsible. Like we need to go hire someone to do this. And we're very fortunate to hire Maria Pergolino, our CMO today, to take that on. But it's a story where, with design, I've been in engineering, I've been in marketing. I sit on an executive team, so I've had a good purview into all ends of the business where, as we've grown and added more integrations and strategic relationships, I've started to own those as well throughout that tenure. And today I lead design, but I also have a platform strategy team that focuses on the ends of how are we thinking about the ecosystem we're building from a technology standpoint of how do we acquire more partners to build on top of ActiveCampaign to extend the capabilities. How do we manage them from a business development perspective? How do we run our developer relations processes? How do we have operations to ensure that the data we're using and the data we're modeling actually helps us decide how to build that platform? So I have that entire end of it as well, which works well because it's a function that touches all sides of the business, right? I have to go work with the sales org, the engineering, product, and design sides of the orgs, and it's helpful that I've had experience on what would be that R&D side and go-to-market sides already, directly as an operator in the business.
Do you think? Well, what do you think? I'm sure you've had time to reflect and your own strengths. You, aside from being just a sharp, switched-on guy, what qualities or what traits do you have that led you into leading marketing, leading design, and all of these other things? Like, why do you think you were chosen to do those, and he found you capable?
Yeah, there's probably like a few things I could unpack there. I would say like at the center of it is just being maniacally customer focused. We can look at things in a lot of different ways and find good and bad reasons as to go do something. I'm always kind of looking at like, what's that third option? And it's always for the customer, right? It's like, it's never like this or that. It's kind of like, well, is there, that's A and B. Is there a C option that's more in favor of the customer that we could dig into? And is there a way to do that to which we can control the scope, right? We think about the scale of it, that like we don't over index on doing something wild. But if we do, we're going to do it for the customer. And I think like that paired with, a strong level of initiative and taking like ultimate responsibility has served well, right? Like you have to operate like an owner in the business to get that done.
Yeah. Is there, wearing so many hats and spinning so many plates, you must have had some bad situations where things went wrong. Can you think of a particular moment in that period where you had a particularly bad fuck up, for want of a better word?
Yeah. I mean, I'm without a doubt plenty. I like. It's a tricky question. Like, what I'll be honest. Like, one of the harder things for me has been in the scenario of you know joining other teams and building new ones. One thing I've done is kind of like dragged design with me through that. Right. So what was all designed ended up engineering and design, which then ended up into marketing and design, which then kind of ends up into platform strategy and design. And that like, it's difficult for me because the way I've always thought about design, it's like design and this, design and that, right? And I feel as if I haven't done the team complete justice or service, like in ensuring like they are positioned well, always within the org, that they have the right opportunities to dig in with their counterparts. Like that's probably been like the hardest thing throughout it all. But I would say like kind of correcting some of that as we dig in. We've hired some tremendous leaders on the design team and are continually growing that side, and are really getting them into strong positions across the org. So
Yeah.
I feel we're getting there, but that's been probably the hardest part.
Yeah. What is the current scope of your role? You're now at the VP level, so I guess you're in the leadership team, right? You're in that, and several hundred people in the company. So yeah, what is the scope of your role at the moment?
Yeah, so it's all things design, all things platform strategy. So when I talk about design, I talk about all things design. So that is product design, that's marketing, brand, communication design, as well as our design system. So a small engineering team within design, even focused on how do we build out standardization of components and patterns. How is that an internal tool we adopt across our own platform? On the partner management, or excuse me, on the platform strategy side, it turns into partner management, developer relations, and then operations. So that entire team, right? Like design is 25 plus folks. Platform strategy would be, I think there's 6 folks there, 5 or 6 folks there. And that's actually a brand new team as of like Q4 last year.
Mm-hmm.
So a growing team at that. And I think, I know we have a good half dozen designers we need to add in Q1 we're looking at. So
What is it like? I mean, so you have 30 to 40-ish people directly underneath you in those teams. You're responsible for all those people and the output of those teams. But what does a typical week look like? Are you mostly involved in hiring? Are you setting the goals? Are you managing the leaders within those teams? Like, what does a typical week look like for you?
yeah, I think the stereotypical answer is like there's no like, typical week, right?
No.
But if I think about it, like it's I'm going to focus in on 3 areas, right? It's going to be people, strategy, and execution. And I'm going to scale them largely in that angle, right? So half my time is going to go to the team and spending time with them to understand what they're working on, how they're progressing on their goals, the problems they have. How can I unblock them? How can we like strategize on what all that is, right? That might be 50% of the time, right? I would say a good 40% then goes into the actual strategy end of just like spending some time to deeply think about like what does all of that mean? Where is this going? What is the next 5 years of this business, right? And how do we really want to dig in and start to unpack that? How do we have to start to operationalize that across the teams, right? Like thinking about what that becomes and kind of putting all that together. And then that remaining 10% is probably like the actual execution then, right?
Yeah.
Like digging in and saying like we got to go do X, Y, and Z, and I'm happy to carry my load of that. Like, what's that look like? What do I got to get done personally? So
when you moved to the VP role, I think you said you were kind of on the executive board prior to this. Since you've been at the VP level, are you now kind of higher level of the decision making of the company. So, what is it like being involved in that super top level where those decisions are made? How has that been for you?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been a VP my entire time at Active Campaign.
Okay.
It's I don't know. I'm like I don't largely like it's not much different than other roles I've had, to be honest. Like it's like there's certainly a larger scale, a larger meaning, but I've always operated in a scenario where I've always thought about the business, not just like the team or discipline, right? Like so for me, like the transition in there is just like, again, going back to the customer, like thinking at that level, like, all right, like what does this mean for the customer? What does this mean for the business? How do we dig in? And it's not, there's nothing personal about it, right? It's like what is best for that, not what is best for Shay, what is best for Shay's team, right? Like how do we operate and orient around it? I think like one of the things I think about and like continually pay attention to is the scale is just different, right? Like how you make a decision for 40,000 customers versus 130,000, right? How you make a decision in a $20 million business versus, $100+ million business. There's more risk. Like it's for a 100% team versus nearly an 800% team, there's just more risk involved. And I like pace myself in understanding that that risk can slow things down, and that would actually be the biggest risk of all, right? Is actually slowing down what we're doing. So you still have to balance the idea of, hey, there is risk here, so let's pay attention to it. Let's like actually unpack that for a minute, but let's do that in a scalable manner so that it doesn't paralyze us and not being able to make a decision, ultimately getting passed up in the moment or that opportunity. And that's probably like the area where I'm like keeping the pulse the most, right?
Yeah. You also took, I think you had 100 million round earlier this year, just before the COVID in January, I believe, of this year. That must, I won't say add extra pressure, but how much has that had an impact on how quickly you want to accelerate the company and that risk you just spoke about?
Yeah. To be honest, that money is about like optionality. And I would say a very different like fundraise than you might commonly see. We raised 100 million doing nearly 100 million in revenue. Where often you see someone raising 100 million doing 15 million in revenue or something, right? Like it is a multiple of revenue. Ours was essentially 1-to-1. So, very non-traditional, I'd say, in that aspect. And the money itself was not as if we needed it to go do something, right? The business was already growing at an incredible clip. The money was more around that optionality of, well, what if we want to deploy capital in certain ways, right? Do we have it? Is it available? And that could be, hey, we want to build a new product. We want to build a new team, or we might want to pursue an acquisition. Like there's different things we might be able to do that in, and open up a new office or expand our geography. Like to have it reduces the risk and makes that a lot easier, right?
Yeah.
So for us, it wasn't like, hey, we need this money to survive, or it's ultimately needed. But if we have it, it opens up far more options for us, and good timing on that.
Has much of that fund been allocated already, or is it mostly sitting in the bank?
Yeah, mostly sitting tight. We certainly deploy the capital. That's why you raise it, right? But I would say it has not been targeted or angled in any one given like specific push or dumped quickly.
Yeah. Another thing I noticed about you is outside of your core, full-time role at Active Campaign, which I'm sure takes up a heck of a lot of your time, you also pursue some of your own interests. And we'll talk about Lead Honestly in a bit more detail, but
yeah.
It seems like you have some entrepreneurial interests outside of Active Campaign. Is that just more for fun? Is it something maybe you see as a future? Like, why do you have your own kind of on the side interests?
Yeah, largely like I'm a lifelong learner. Like that's like what I like wholeheartedly believe. I come from a family of educators, so both my parents are teachers, and to me, there's ways to get involved and like give back into the community, right? So, being an advisor to a venture capital firm, or mentoring at Techstars, or like just embedding myself in those, like I enjoy like the ability to give back, but also selfishly learn. right? And like I get to learn about all these different businesses, all these different verticals and industries, all the different problems they're solving and how they're digging in, right? So in my case, like I think that makes me a stronger operator wholeheartedly. Like I don't just know B2B SaaS and MarTech. Like I could dig in on different areas of consumer landscapes or elsewhere because I've spent time with operators in those businesses, hearing their problems, talking to them around different ideas of how they might solve them, following up on those conversations. Like it's a big thing for me is not just like I could sit downtown and we could talk about your business and be like, hey, here's some ideas. But if I don't like, if we never close that loop, right? If you don't like come back and are like, hey, here's what worked and here's what didn't work, like it's kind of just like a hypothesis sitting out there unproven, right? So I find like getting a bit more involved with like select few businesses actually allows me to close that loop and really learn from them, and hopefully like I'm adding value to them in that process.
Yeah. Just out of interest, you said both your parents or were teachers. What did they teach?
Yeah, so my mom is generally like elementary math, English, science. My father did athletic training, health, physical education. More traditionally, he's an athletic trainer, but you got to go get a
Yeah.
secondary education degree to actually teach at the schools during the time sports aren't active.
Gotcha. And you're originally from Ohio?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But currently living in Chicago?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Does that make you a Bulls fan?
They're just not that good. Wait, I mean, I should take that back. They, honestly, Michael Jordan, the whole era of that, just an incredible story. And generally speaking, like a decent team. To be honest with you, Todd, like growing up in Ohio, the sports teams aren't that great. Right. So if you go basketball, you're talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers. And until LeBron James came around, there wasn't much happening there. You go professional football, you have the Browns and Bengals. Neither one of them were worth much. Baseball, you have the Indians and the Reds. Neither one of them are that great. Like
Yeah.
it was always a tough state.
My knowledge on basketball is really, really poor. Like American sports, completely outside the realm of my understanding, especially American football. I have absolutely no clue how that works at all. But I did love, what's it called? The Last Dance. What an incredible documentary that was. I didn't really know much about Michael Jordan, to be honest. I knew he was a, very famous basketball player, but I had no idea, the drive that guy had and the success the Bulls had. And it sounds like they've kind of diminished somewhat. Then they're not the same team they were back then.
They have not held on like they were back in the 90s. No, unfortunately.
Okay.
So, yeah.
It's a shame. It would be pretty cool if you could go watch them week in, week out, assuming COVID wasn't here, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Let's actually on the COVID thing, let's not linger too long on COVID, but has COVID impacted Active Campaign in, has there been any particular changes in consumer behavior or anything noteworthy that's changed the strategy for Active Campaign?
Yeah, I think like most businesses, right, back in March of last year, 2020, we braced for impact. Like no one really knew what this was going to be, how it was going to play out. I would say everyone was a little scared, right? Of just like, hold on, let's batten down the hatches, like let's prepare. And for us, like we really just doubled down on our existing customers. We said, hey, you know what? Like again, maniacally focused on the customer. Let's make sure they're successful. Let's do everything we can to support them and like help them through this time. But we kind of saw like two interesting things happen in the business. One is new business actually really started to grow. In those times of downturns or recessions, like you see a lot of businesses started. And with businesses starting today, it's generally starting digital first. And they were coming to Active Campaign in new waves saying, hey, I need an email marketing solution. I have a website. I need to build some automation into it, right? So we actually saw new business really start to grow, which was very welcome on our part and fortunate to see. The second interesting thing we saw was a lot of expansion from our existing customer base. Those customers we did have also buttoned down and said, hey, I need to talk to my customers. I need to bring them all together. Like now more than ever, I have to be in communication with them to let them know how we're adjusting our own business, how we're changing and evolving. So we saw our customers really begin to expand their accounts, and upgrade to different plans and tiers. So we were incredibly fortunate in that, like throughout COVID, we've actually been able to accelerate our growth. So like a testament and honor of the platform, but also understanding we are very fortunate in that.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like as a whole, the SaaS space is, yeah, I mean, pretty much a good space to be in, right?
Yeah.
None of us, me included, hadn't planned for this, of course, and I think feel very fortunate that we're in the SaaS space, which is growing, and I think from COVID, it's probably accelerating. So that's a
Yeah.
good place to be. One
What
thing, sorry, go on, please.
I was just say, like, one thing we've seen, like, honestly, it's been really like inspiring for, myself, the team, is a lot of our customers have used Active Campaign to pivot their business in COVID times, right? Like, yesterday I heard a story of essentially a company that was doing like in-person education courses and classes for children. And just overnight, like with Active Campaign at the heart, we're able to, within like literally 48 hours, pivot to offering online courses, change their entire business model, right? Build in all the integrations they need, from the meeting integrations to the video calls, etc. And they sent us a note and are like, hey, like, in what was like potentially like the worst year of our business, we actually started to really grow because we rethought the entire model. And with Active Campaign, they're
So
driving
cool.
it. Like, we were actually able to accelerate what we were doing. And that's like the warm and fuzzies, right? Like, that's why we do this. So
That's so cool. If you think about these days how much you can achieve with software, I mean, Active Campaign, which actually leads nicely onto my next question. Active Campaign does so much. It really,
yeah,
really does. You actually look at the cost. I mean, if for example, if you're talking a couple of thousand contacts for a couple of $100 less, couple of hundred
yeah,
dollars a month, you can have incredibly sophisticated piece of software that will pretty much run, a vast majority of your business, CRM, marketing, like
yeah.
the whole nine. So it's pretty cool.
It's incredible to think like pricing starts at $9 a month. it's,
It's crazy.
it's yeah, less than a pint here in Chicago. So
That's nuts. Actually, that was my question around. And when I first visited Active Campaign, and it's kind of similar with HubSpot. When you go and you look at their pricing page, for example, and it's similar with you guys. It's like, wow, okay,
mhm.
just to understand, all the features, the different pricing packages. It's super complex, and I guess in a way you're. Yeah, it's like a victim of your own success. You're able to
Mm.
give so much, but then it's also difficult to explain. How do you, let's start from kind of board level, when you're sitting trying to make decisions, how do you even think about, where to focus, how to focus the teams? Like, how do you approach that?
Yeah. Generally, a couple of different ways. Like, one is just knowing the voice of the customer is super important, right? And that voice is like largely coming in on two areas. Where is our product performing today? Where, like, what we're offering, where does it need to be iterated upon, right? Where could it grow? Where could it change? And then what other problems are they facing that we're not tackling, that we're not addressing, right? Where we need to look to a partner, or we need to consider where we change our strategy to actually suit their needs. Um, we've done that, like, in a few different ways. Like, in the last 3 years when I started, we didn't have a conversations product. And I can remember some early conversations with Jason and our executive team of like, hey, like, this is clearly a channel, right? Like, this is going to be something that's not going away. And we have to start to think about how we want to offer a solution towards that, right? And we went out and built our conversations product, right? Along the same lines, it's like, hey, we need some form of a landing page. Like, folks have to drive contacts into the system. They want to run a promotion. They need some place to like point people to direct them to that. So we went out and built a landing page, solution towards that. Vice versa, we talk about personalization, but we have to think about personalization across all of the different channels, right? It's not enough to just say, hey, we send personal emails. Like, that's good, but it's not like the answer, right? So we developed a web personalization tool so that on any given website, right? So on your website, Todd, you could drop in the script and start to build some targeting in that says like, hey, when Shay comes, Shay's coming from Chicago, right? Like, let's switch out the testimonials to be from B2B SaaS, companies we've worked with, and let's like say good morning versus good afternoon because we know he's in a different time zone, right? Like, things like that. So we have a script where you can literally drag and drop, kind of WYSIWYG style editor of, let me change and adjust the website based off that.
Yeah.
those are all new products we've thought about by hearing our customers and what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You also worked in venture and I'm not sure if it was a part-time gig or it was a full-time, but you worked in venture and you helped to validate business ideas. And you were talking there about this new product. How do you how would you go about validating an idea? Is it to build the minimum viable thing, get feedback as quickly as possible? Like how do you approach that?
Yeah. So I've spent some time in different like venture firms and studios. Like way back in the day, like pre-Groupon, I like worked in-house full time for a venture capital firm, basically helping validate ideas. Largely, they would invest in a company. I would help that company basically build out that product. One of those ended up being Groupon, which I got. That's like winning the lottery, frankly.
Oh wow.
That's a good business. I've also spent some time with Techstars as an entrepreneur in residence, so very, very like on that earlier stage of how do you get started, right? And you're pretty close to like right on the money. Like it's like let's build it and see how this works. But for me, it's always like let's just go talk to people. Let's talk to our customers. And there's like that's a science, to be honest with you. Like I've spent a lot of time thinking about like how do you actually have that conversation? How do you validate an idea through that conversation? And the ways you don't want to do it is like I don't want to say like, hey, is what do you think, Todd? Is this a good idea? Or hey, would you buy this product? If you did this, or even like how much would you pay for this? Folks don't want to be mean, right? They're very conflict averse. They're gonna be like, yeah, it's a great idea. I would probably give you $100 for it. It's like
bet the house on it, man. Go for it.
Right. Like, so you have to switch that conversation around and just learn, like go into more of discovery, right? So like I did this on our call earlier, Todd. I shared Active Campaign, how we bring all these tools together, and you started talking about like, oh yeah, we're using Typeform for this. We got HubSpot over here, XYZ. I just went into it naturally. It's like, well, how do you get them to work together? Like I just go into like that discovery mode. Like, how are you dealing with that? Like, what does that problem look like? What have you tried? Where's that headed, right? And it's casual. Like literally every conversation for me turns into some level of a research conversation when I'm validating those ideas. And those can happen, with customer calls or in a Starbucks, quite frankly, of just like bumping into someone and be like, oh, like, what do you do? Oh, cool. You're a lawyer. How do you get new customers? Like, how does that work? Is that mostly word of mouth referrals? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you just make it the conversation. I wouldn't be like, hey, do you mind if I call you next Tuesday at 3:00 to have a conversation about a product I'm building? Like, they're going to be like, probably not. And if you do get them, then they're too nice, right? They're going to like actually give you like bad signals. And in those like things too, I'll ask, like the one thing I'll ask for is intros, right? Like, if we had that call, I'd be like, who else is struggling with this? Like, who have you also had a similar conversation with? Like, I'd love to talk to them about this too, right? So just kind of like casting a wider net of who could I talk to about these things to really like flush out, the signal of the market of what's really valuable. Because my perception's probably not the reality, right? Like I need to get that checked by others.
Yeah. So basically being incredibly inquisitive, being casual, digging deeper and deeper, asking them referrals, asking them the same questions, rinse and repeat until you get to a point where you've had 20, 30, 40 conversations, whatever it is, and you have a really good kind of lay of the land. What is it? Is there a certain kind of pivotal point where you think maybe there's a lot of nuance to this, but actually this is this is a really good idea, this problem exists, and this is something we should invest in?
That's like that's like the fun side, right? Like every conversation's it's going to shape that idea, right? You're going to start to learn like more about it, how you might approach it. At some point, it's like go time. Like let's make this into action. And I think there's never like a really like okay, we know now's the time to go, right? Usually, what I'm doing in those conversations is starting to get a better sense of like where to start, what is most important, right? And how do we start to like unblock or tackle that? I can like share like a little story, like so Lead Honesty, for example, right? Lead Honesty was born out of my time at a company called Belly, where we were building out a digital loyalty rewards program and platform. And we raised over $30 million from some of the best investors, Andreessen Horowitz and others. And a total roller coaster of 4 years, right? Where raised money, built a team, struggled, laid folks off, caught success, raised more money, hired more folks, struggled, laid folks off. Like, it's a hard, like, actual role to have, right? For everyone in the organization. So I was leading product and design in that organization. My counterpart was leading engineering. And we started to spend some time just thinking about the questions we were asking our teams to make sure they were engaged, that despite everything happening around us in turbulent ways of incredible highs and incredible lows, that like we were staying true to like what we had to deliver on. And we just started like creating Google Docs of all the questions we would ask our teams in one-on-one meetings. And as I would just talk to other leaders and other orgs, they'd be like, "Hey, can I get that list of questions? Like, can I use those? Can I do this?" And ultimately, as like is often the case, is like we were kind of like winding down the business. I was like, the thing I think might have been the real success story here is like the process we built for how we actually led the team. And we've had enough people tell us they'd probably pay for it. And I was just like, you know what, like, let's test it. Like I'm a decent enough engineer. So just quickly put together a landing page, connected it to Stripe. Quite literally, this is between Christmas and New Year's, several years ago. Posted on Product Hunt, emailed, a dozen of my friends, said, "Hey, I built this, check this out." And I remember I went to lunch with my wife, we're eating some ramen, and my phone just is buzzing of people signing up. And I ended up calling, the engineering counterpart. And I was like, "You got to get over here because Monday we owe people questions and we don't have any platform here, man. There's nothing here. Like this is just like a Stripe checkout page. Like we don't have a product." But it was like, that was the test, right? Like, let's just get those early adopters in. Let's put like their money where their mouth is and see if this works, and test and iterate from there.
Yeah, so building the minimum viable thing could even just be a landing page. I think it's often called like a smoke test. Would that be you just build something as there's a problem. What did it look like? So you got several people sign up. How many people signed up in like the first few days?
A few dozen. I honestly don't remember what it was like. It wasn't like, it was not over 100. It was not like mythical, but it was like there's a real interest here, right? Like we got to do something.
So what did you do next?
Like slowly but surely started to build a product over the years. Those first people who signed up, like we committed that every Monday we would email them 5 new questions. So literally they couldn't log into a platform. If they wanted us to stop billing them, they would have to contact us. There's no like cancel my subscription. They're just like super bare bones, right? And quite literally like would send emails from Active Campaign, like here are your 5 questions, if you will, right? And then spent time with those customers, just listening to them. And they're like, "Hey, I want to be able to customize the questions, or I'd like my employees to leave their responses and like track them ahead of time." And like, we kind of knew this is what we were doing with our teams, albeit in Google Docs, but we had to build like the process and the automation around it. So it was, okay, let's create a way for employees to leave their responses. But we didn't build a way for them to log in. We just built a way to add their email addresses into the system that would send them, soft logged in tokens to where they could submit their answers and then close the form. That then turned into, I want a way to be able to see all of the meetings I've had over time as an employee. So, okay, let's get them a login now, right? And slowly but surely, like I've just added to the product over the years for that, but only based off of how we've had those conversations where we're kind of at a tipping point of so many people asking for something. When a customer asks for something, we have a board where we track it all, and it has a weight that has, every time someone asks for it, we basically increase the weight and we copy and paste their comments directly onto that thread. So the good news is like, if something hits, I got a dozen people asking for this. It's like, okay, well, there's a strong signal here and I have a dozen people to go talk to, right? And I can really start to understand, hey, what are you trying to do? What's your goal here? What are you doing to get around this today? Like, what does the right solution start to look like for you? And it's, can I angle in on something that is, again, reducing the scope of that, but solving their needs, right? That we're not over delivering on it.
What is it? Maybe we didn't give the audience much context into Lead Honestly, but what does Lead Honestly look like today?
Sorry, I grazed that.
That's okay.
So Lead honestly is a platform for managers to have one-on-one conversations with their team and focus on how they build meaningful connections with them, right? So it is a tool where you can add your team members, and you schedule your one-on-one meetings with them, and it will then send those employees questions. And the questions are themed, so you could put them into different playbooks. So you could say, this person I think is a star. I want to put them on a management track. So I'm going to ask them questions around how they like to be a leader, how they think about leading a team, right? Like really prime them for that. You might have someone else who's just struggling to get motivated. So let me ask them questions around motivation. And it starts to track all of that into a system, right? So you can have conversations through those questions. You can have, agenda topics or discussions where you can track what you want to talk about. You can put action items in there. You can run pulse surveys so you can see the kind of the morale of your team over time. But the whole heart and like whole of it is truly that relationship between a manager and their team. It's like, it's not a performance engagement or management tool. Like it's truly built for that team, not HR.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the way it's, it scales similar to like Slack, if you will, right? Like you see a manager sign up and they might expense it or put it on their own personal card. And then slowly but surely you see it popcorn through an org where other managers start signing up. And the next thing you know, you have, a director of engineering calling you because, a dozen of his managers are using it or her managers. And they're like, well, can I just centralize the billing? Can we figure this out?
I think for me, and just speaking honestly, one-to-ones, I can be sporadic with one-to-ones. Sometimes I'll get on my stride and I'll do 3 months in a row with everybody. I'll always do the one-to-ones. Maybe I'll skip a month. And then sometimes I'm prepared. Sometimes I'm not. I'm really busy, and it's like, shit, I've got a one-to-one with so-and-so. And the question is like, how are you doing?
Yep.
And you kind of you just
that's
float.
Not good.
You just exactly. And and I know this is bad. So I guess the lead honestly is solving that problem. Is giving you a little bit more structure. Being able to track things over time. And it seems like listening to what you were saying, you give from originally the product was just emailing every week the questions. Mm-hmm. It seems like a lot of value is actually just giving people good questions to ask their team.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it on the head, Todd. Like that if you sat down for every one-on-one meeting and said, like, how are you doing? Well, you're going to hear the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm good. There's a few things I think could be better, but I also realize that's just kind of the situation, the circumstances of how we're operating. Hopefully in time, those get better. This is not a meaningful conversation. Like you're not like engaging with your team, right? But if you switch those up, right? If you change the questions every time you met, and those questions pushed employees to be more reflective, you're going to have different conversations. So I could come in and say a question like, Todd, are you making progress on your goals? And it might actually explicit kind of a negative response. You might be like, well, Shay, no, but not my fault. Like, we had to put out this fire with this customer. We had a big opportunity open up over here, so I had to jump on it. It's end of year, so I've been trying to plan and get like everything aligned. So yeah, I'm not really making progress on my goals, but that's not my fault, right? Like you got to be careful on that. So we think a lot about like the psychological of those questions. So I would rephrase that to be like, hey Todd, are you doing your best to make progress on your goals? And now it's a reflective or introspective question where you're like, am I doing my best? Like, I'm not making much progress. And there's reasons for that, which are all, viable and okay. But yeah, I guess like Thursday morning, like I had a few meetings get canceled and I laid off the gas for a minute. Like I could have taken a moment to dig into my one goal that I've been thinking about. I didn't get a chance to do that. So if I'm honest with myself, like I'm going to give myself a C, right? And that's the secret moment for a manager where you're like, if you can get that team member to see things that you will never see, right, and they can coach themselves on it, like you're in the sweet spot at that point.
Yeah.
So
does the software, do these questions get sent to them before the one-to-one, or do you ask them during the one-to-one? It's before.
Yeah, before.
I see. Gotcha.
Yeah, and that's important because you want that person to have time to sit with it, to think about it, to like respond in a careful manner, like where they have comfort in that. If you fire questions off like live, some folks can handle it. But being more on that engineering product design side, like we're probably more introverted than not. Like we want a moment to think and provide a logical response, right?
Yeah.
And I see stronger responses from it.
Yeah, and how much of COVID as well? I think
Mhm.
This product must be adding much more value now because so many people are working remotely in silo. You don't
Yep.
have those serendipitous moments by the coffee machine where you can say,
Yep.
How many times have I been at work and I've just noticed somebody's body language? I've seen him in a conversation.
Mhm.
I've said, hey, we just need to just check in with, and you just don't have
Yeah.
that same interaction. So with COVID, it must be, yeah. Have you seen extra people signing up to the product?
Yeah, yeah. It's still like a small product, right?
Yeah,
It's the nights and weekends project for me and the other co-founder, and it is a passion project for us. Like this is the tool we wanted when we were leading our teams, and what we build for that.
yeah,
But certainly, like it's like slow and mighty, just like a
yeah.
very bootstrap, profitable business that continues to just chip away and grow,
Yeah.
month by month.
You seem to have yeah, quite an affinity to leadership, and obviously you're managing large teams yourself now. Just how much of the way a manager manages an employee, how much do you think has an impact on employees' happiness, motivation,
Yeah,
efficiency? It's like, is it the main thing, or
yeah, pretty much.
yeah, yeah,
Like
okay.
Gallup does like they call it the State of the American Manager report, and they attribute 70% of an employee's happiness is directly related to their manager.
Wow,
Huge, right? And then the common saying is like people leave their managers, not companies. Right? Like if you think about past roles or jobs you've had, like did you really leave the business or were you leaving someone at that business? Right? And more often than not, it's like I'm getting out from under this manager than I am, the team or the organization.
yeah.
So
Do you have any advice, for all the people running SaaS companies that have remote teams? Are there some core things, principles, pillars that you've learned over the years how to get the most out of your teams?
yeah, so a few things like I think about, and it's very difficult, honestly. Like
It is.
I think what attracts me to it is going back to my design roots. Like these are very difficult problems. Like at some point, like from a technology perspective, like they're all solvable. Like there's always a solution. With people, no. Like it's
No, ton of
you're
nuance.
there's emotion gets involved, right? Like it switches from logic to emotion, and that just changes everything. The things I think about are honestly like just trusting the team, and that honestly is difficult for me. Like I felt like I was a very strong like individual contributor, so I've always had opinions on how to do things, and it's taken a lot for me to be like, Shay, it's not important, right? Like let the team go for a minute. Like I don't need to use my authority to dictate what must be done, right? I'm in a better position if I use that authority to help them understand the standard is how we should operate, right? If I use that authority to enable them, right, to prune, to weed out, to help set direction, to get them to agree on the change, versus like this is what we're doing, why we're doing it, let's go, right? Like that can come from the team, and I can help enable and kind of ensure we operate at a high standard through that. Trusting them is going to be a big part of that, right? And with that is like the psychological safety of how you run a team, right? So really ensuring like we're celebrating our work, we're recognizing the team, they're getting the right level of encouragement and feedback on different levels, right? Like feedback can be, it could be straight up recognition of like, Todd, great job. It could be coaching. It could be like, hey, when you're building like the landing pages, like think about the story you're telling and make sure like that's coming out in these ways, right? Like that's a signal of feedback. Or it could be, peer evaluative. It could be your annual performance review where it's like, all right, Todd, here's how you're stacking up. I think your engagement's good here, right? You're probably low on your performance on this end. Like we got to work on these. Like it's more evaluation. So it's thinking about like what those are for the team and aligning that to their interest as well.
Yeah, I think the generation now, I think I read something about millennials and how much millennials want feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So feedback is clearly a huge part of that. Just on a more tactical level, because you run software that helps you schedule one-to-ones. Let's assume someone doesn't use Lead honestly. How
Mm-hmm.
should a manager typically structure a one-to-one and not make the stupid mistakes that I do and say, how you doing?
Well, yeah. So a few things I always think about. Like one is this is that employees meeting. It's the team members meeting. Like largely let them run it.
Hmm.
And it'll be different for every team member, right? Like I honestly don't have one-on-ones that are near the same across different folks. Some people come in and they just want to talk about the state of the business, and you know they'll do personal check-ins of how they're feeling, how things are going at home, and I'm there for that. Like let's talk about it. I want to understand like their sensibilities. Others come in with a checklist of here's the 50 things I'm working on and I need your input on X, Y, and Z. Right? It's like, okay, like if that's, you know, you want to do that, let's run with it. So it's always the employees meeting. I also then think like there's a few things like I want to make sure I do in that meeting. And one of which you said earlier, and like my senses perked, but it's like you have to prepare, right? Like I try and structure my one-on-ones in specific days, right? So Tuesdays and Wednesdays are generally like heavy one-on-one days with me. So I have a few today, and I'll start my morning by thinking about each person I got to meet with that day, and just computer off, just pen and paper. All right, I got to talk to this person. What is going on in their world right now? Any feedback I have for them? Any updates I should be thinking of? So prepare, right? Then it is like always share some level of gratitude. Hey, Todd, I really appreciated the way you dug in and kick off this week, right? You added a few songs to the playlist. You had some great shout outs in the chat. So while you didn't present, you still had an impact on the team and really raised the morale. So thank you, right? Like put some gratitude in the conversation and being specific of what that was, and so that they can go repeat that action. Then I just listen, sit back, let them drive the conversation, engage with them on it. And then it's wrapping up, right? It's like, okay, here's what I heard. Here are the action items. Like, this is what we got to go do. And then end on a high note, right? Like back to a level of gratitude for a minute of like, awesome, we got a great week ahead. Like, I think you're going to do a great job with the podcast. Like, I'm excited to see the next episode that comes out with Shay. It should be great. Shay's an awesome person, right? Like,
I wish you were my manager, Shay. I'm loving the feedback.
It will look like, and like, don't let me fool you. Like, I'm not perfect. Like, that you throw again like emotion, right? Like the heat of the case of a business. Like we all have busy or stressful days. So like I'm the first to admit, like I don't show up to every one-on-one like geared up, like in the right like even mood, right? Like I have to find ways to kind of like figure out what those triggers are and get to a place of like, all right, I'm ready for this conversation. So don't feel bad if you're not, you know, on that pace.
To give myself a little bit of credit, I'm usually relatively organized, but I do have those bad moments where I'm like, oh shit, 1 minute to prepare for this one-to-one. How you doing? But
Yeah.
actually, my final question, and it's actually a question I would love to know the answer for myself, is upward feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never, I know 360-degree feedback is one of the ways you can facilitate that.
Mm-hmm.
How do I, running a team, how do I get feedback? And I have no clue. Aside from sending a survey, what is a good approach there?
Yeah, I think you have to ask for it, right? And as you ask for it, there are different, like same way when you're doing like evaluating a product, right? Like, hey, is this a good idea? Would you pay for this? Like, those aren't good questions. If you ask the team, hey, do you have any feedback for me? It's not a good question because it's putting so much dependency on that team member to try and understand, what do you want? Like, are you looking for, again, the different levels of feedback? Are you seeking appreciation? Do you want coaching? Or you want evaluation? Like, are you talking about this project, that? Like, that is an open box that is difficult for me as a subordinate to even try to unpack, right? So I think like how you do that is important, and the questions matter. So I might say, hey Todd, in the last week, like, what could I have done to make your job easier, right? What behavior can I change to help you or the team going forward? What do you dislike or really like about, my management style in the last quarter? Are there any challenges you have about working with me that like we could iron out and smooth and talk about? What's one thing you expect of me, and where can I improve in meeting that expectation for you? I want to make sure I'm delivering to you.
So being specific is super
Key.
important. And do you find that having a conversation like in COVID times, a video call like this, do you think you should give them the questions ahead of time, or just maybe it depends person to person? Or
yeah, the easy answer is it depends. A lot of folks, like, I'll always ask for feedback at annual reviews.
Okay.
right? Or semi-annual reviews. So if like, if I'm going to sit down and give you feedback, I want it to be reciprocal. And I'm going to say, hey, Todd, like I'm going to prepare a few things like I want to talk about and go over with, but I would love to turn that table and let you give me a few items of feedback. And, you know, here's where I'm digging in this quarter. Here's where I've really been trying to grow or focus on. So I would love your feedback very specifically on these items, right? Am I giving the team enough direction, but not too much direction on this, right? Like that's something I've been trying to improve upon. Let me know how I'm doing that, right? And I'll unpack that for the team so they know how to give me the feedback, but I'll tie it into that with them. I think the big kicker is like, excuse me, you have to take action on that feedback. You have to own it. The worst thing you could do is say like, okay, great, thanks for the feedback. And then it's just like crickets and they're like, well, did he listen? Like, was that interesting? So
it must be a good feeling for an employee if they give constructive feedback and then you actually action that feedback and it makes an improvement. So
yeah, I always present it back to the team, right? So like if we're going through a cycle where I'm seeking feedback and giving feedback, in our next team meeting, you can guarantee like I'm going to have a slide of here are the themes I've heard from you all. Here's where I'm going to get started to dig into that. And I don't know where that's going to go. I can't guarantee that I'm actually like going to do these things the whole quarter or what have you, but like I'm listening, I'm thinking about it, and I'm going to come back to this in time. And here's how I'm getting started. Usually helps set the tone.
Yeah. Just one thing I did think as well when you were talking about the one-to-ones, how much of, how important is it, do you think, to understand that person, you know, on a personal level? I mean, something I do, of course, how are you doing? You know, how are your family? How are things at home, of course, but I'm not sure every manager does that. How important do you think that is to, you know, build rapport and relationship with someone in your team?
I mean, it's important, without a doubt. I also think like there's a respect to that though too. Like some people are like, work is work and home is home, and like we're not going to cross the lines. And that's totally like comfortable and fine with me. The folks like that are willing to open up to share a bit more, like I do take it as a responsibility to learn about them, right? Like I could go through, shoot, there's got to be 30, 45 people on my team. I could probably name most of their partners or spouses, their children. I could kind of give you a pulse of how things are going at home, what's up with them. Like I feel like fairly personally connected to them in that.
It's also good as well if you're a manager, that probably gives you a little bit of an edge, because if you know someone's having a hard time at home, they're struggling at work, then you kind of understand why that is. So
yeah, I think the thing I am always trying to like suss out too is what is someone's interest, right? Because interests are gonna like help you in so many ways. Like you begin to understand that person's motivations, right? Like, and there's a difference of here's my position, here's how I feel about this, versus like, well, what made you get to that position? What helped you decide that that was your position? And behind that, somewhere is your interest. And if I could get to a sense of understanding your interests, then I can really understand of how to motivate you, how to engage you, how to position you on projects and teams to where you can really leverage that interest, right? So that not only are you successful and fulfilled, but you get to deliver at a higher level for the organization. It's a win-win for both of us. So, and I think that can blend from personal life to business life and things like that, right? Like the interest can be kind of spread across those because those are wholeheartedly who you are as a person.
Cool. That's nice advice. And I said that was my last question. I'll cheat and say that was my last professional question. Maybe I can just ask you, just closing off on a more personal note. Like, what are you interested in outside of work? I know you have Lead Honestly, but do you have any passions outside of work?
Yeah, I mean, my passion kind of is my work. Honestly, as silly as that might sound, like I really do love these conversations. I love interacting with customers. I am a builder through and through, right? Outside that, like it's I love to cycle, be it road or mountain biking. Just like that's my form of exercise.
I recently got into cycling. My dad's really into cycling, and he forced me to get a bike. And where I am in Amsterdam, I don't know what it is, but something to do. Someone did explain it to me about the weather, but it's something to do with as some low pressure hits a certain point, and for whatever reason, it's incredibly windy in Amsterdam. So whenever I go for a bike ride, it's like it's relentless in my face. So it kind of takes the edge off a little bit. And also, the Netherlands is incredibly flat. There's not really much in terms of. I mean, I'm from a place called Shropshire, which is in the countryside in England, which is very hilly. So it's not particularly inspiring, but I do now in these Corona times, I think cycling is a great way to actually just to get out, because you can travel and get out.
Absolutely.
So I get it.
Yeah. So I'm Chicago, for context, incredibly flat, like super flat as well. We are on the Great Lakes, so I'm on Lake Michigan. So that's literally a half mile from my house. There's a lakefront path that kind of goes around it. And I feel you on the wind. I don't know if it's as windy as Amsterdam, but it is. You can get some serious winds out there that are just, they're painful. Like it's, I would rather bike uphill than into the wind, quite frankly.
Me too. And why is the wind never behind you either? It's always, I don't, you always seem to go out into the wind, and if for whatever reason, I'm like, oh great, on the way back, it's going to be great. But somehow on the way back, it's windy as well. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, it's painful. But
well, listen, Shay, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. Where can people get in contact with you or follow you if they want to hear from you?
Yeah, best case scenarios would be LinkedIn and Twitter. Shay Howe on each of those. So very happy to hear from folks and dig in with them. Would love to chat with them.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time, Shay, and hopefully speak soon.
Yeah, Todd, thank you. I really appreciate your time. So thank you for having me.